About 3 weeks ago, I started preparing for a talk. The topic was death and dying and impermanence. And after about a week of getting ready for that talk and 3 other talks, I knew that I was under the gun with a flu virus trying to attack my body, but I kept going because in my mind I had to. And so as each day got closer to the talk about death and impermanence, I was feeling worse and worse and able to do less and less. And then I gave the talk and survived that, and the following night I went to Coeur d'Alene and gave another talk. And then on the way home in the car, I don't know if Venerable Sultram noticed, but I knew that I had lost the battle. And I could feel this body of bones and flesh sort of sink into the seat. And I was surrendering to whatever that was. And I didn't know that I was up for a 7-day stint in bed. And this is not my style of living, because like everyone else in the room, I have strong willpower, and darn it, I wasn't going to get sick. But I saw that I had no control, and so at a certain point I had to sort of give in or surrender. And then it became very fruitful. I had fully intended to get up Saturday morning, whatever state I was in, and go do the water bowls in the hall, because it was my turn. And for some unknown reason, the alarm clock didn't go off. And I'm sure everyone was thinking, where is she? But anyway, I couldn't get out of bed that day. It was like the gravity meter had been switched on to like 1 million, and lifting my head was kind of a struggle. And then, of course, I just had to sort of live with my mind for the next 7 days. So it was actually a very, very fruitful time. It wasn't my choice of how I used the time, but I thought, well, okay, this is it. This is how it's going to be. And what is it going to be like when death actually arrives, which could be in any moment, since that's what I was talking about during the talk, and still having trouble believing. So I got to look at that resistance more and more. And I just saw over and over again that even though now I'm in a position where I can't even get out of bed, death is still a long way off. And that is so perplexing to me. This continues to be perplexing. At the same time, in that time period where I was getting sick, I found out about 4 people that I have known at various times in my life who died, and I didn't know about it. And so I was really reflecting on their lives and how we intersected in our lives and what our exchanges were like when we intersected, and how the last exchange went and all of that, and then making prayers for their future rebirths, and just feeling a lot of gratitude for what they gave to my life. So I was very happy to have the time to do that, because I saw in my 7-day stint in bed that I haven't been making time for that kind of thing as much as I would like to. The other thing that was very alarming was that I saw that I was in bed more than Maitri, and Maitri sleeps about 16 to 20 hours a day. And so then I thought about the people in my life who have commented, gee, I think I'd like to come back as a cat at the Abbey next time. I mean, it's just deluxe here. And just this horror, that thinking that people want to be reborn as an animal. And I've heard this throughout my life, that people look at their pets and say, you know what? This is it. This is where I want to come back to. And I try and tell them what I can, and if they're not Buddhist, you have to be quite careful, because if they don't believe in rebirth, they can get quite offended or just kind of freaked out. So I was looking at Maitri's life, which is, she's at the top of the heap for Catland, being at the Abbey, living full-time with Venerable when she's here, but 16 hours or 20 hours a day of sleeping, and yes, she's hearing Dharma teachings, but what is she doing with her mind? And then I just kept asking her, maybe you're an emanation. Maybe you're not really a cat, and you're just here to help us. I'm sure that might be part of it. So these 4 people that died, they died at different ages, which, again, shows me, my death isn't far off. They died of different things. One person died of Alzheimer's, another person had pancreatic cancer. Let's see, what did the other person die of? Oh, mental illness. I don't know I don't know how that brings on death, but I knew that she was sick for about 25 years. And then the last person I found out, I think on day 5 of being horizontal, I had a phone call with my sister about a caregiving issue. And she told me about Angie Edgerton. And the last time I saw Angie was at the old folks home. And my mum was playing the piano for the old people there. My mum is an old people too, except she thinks she's not. And Angie motored past with her little walker, and she came over and gave me a big hug. And at some point I said, Angie, how old are you? And she said, well, I think I'm 100. I thought, I don't know, Angie. But it turns out that day, and that was the last day I saw her, she was 4 months away from being 104. So she died she died in July of 2011, and I was there probably in June of 2011. And that day I said, well, how are you doing? And she said, well, pretty good. And she was just a sprightly little muffin, just motoring around and very happy. So I'm sure that she had a very peaceful death because she lived a very peaceful life. And I was surprised that Angie died. So did I think Angie was going to live forever? Yes. Yes, of all the people that I know, she was going to do it. So, this ignorance that just penetrates my mind is just continually shocking to me. The other thing I did with my time lying in bed was I started making lists of people that I knew that died, that I know about dying. And I didn't write it down, so that's the next thing I have to do. And I remember Zopa having the instruction at one point from Venerable Children that she should write down all the people that she knew that died. This was years ago. And I think that's a good practice for all of us, because now my list is quite long. And I hope I can remember all of them, because I want to make prayers for all these people. And that, when we meet in a future life, that we're, continually helping each other along the path. And then one day at lunch when this is maybe shortly just after the talk, we were sort of bantering on the topic of, well, if you knew that you were going to die at 5 o'clock tonight, what would you do? And so Zopa said, well, she said she wouldn't be sitting at the lunch table, she'd be in the hall meditating. So we thought, that's probably what we would all do. And then, we continued talking about this. And as I continued thinking about it, probably if we were absolutely 100% sure it was 5 o'clock tonight, yes, we probably wouldn't have lunch. But who has that kind of information? Well, I don't. So then I was reading in a book by His Holiness called Becoming Enlightened, what people do who probably do know that it's 5 o'clock tonight and how they live their lives. And so some of this is going to sound very, very familiar to most of us who know a certain person. So this is what His Holiness says. Sometimes when people come to accept that they might die at any time, they draw the mistaken conclusion that planning for this life is useless, so they don't really need to accomplish anything. However, this is not the point. We just need to place less emphasis on merely our own happiness, on living a long time, accumulating more and more wealth, building a house beyond what we really need, and all of that. Instead, we need to engage in activities for the welfare of the society as a whole, such as building schools, hospitals, and factories. We need to base our lives on altruistic concern. And then he goes on to make this very compelling number of examples. He says, consider, for example, what Atisha's Tibetan student Dromton did in the 11th century. Though he had realized the full scope of practices for becoming enlightened, he built a temple at Rato in central Tibet. He just didn't sit around thinking, oh, I might die today. Similarly, at the beginning of the 15th century, Tsongkhapa not only built Ganden Monastic University, but once that had been built, he advised his student Jamyang Choje to build a similar institution of learning near Lhasa called Drepung. And he advised another student, Jamchen Choje, so the first one was Jamyang Choje, to build another on the other side of Lhasa called Sera. They all undertook large projects to advance the welfare of society for hundreds and even thousands of years. Is this starting to sound familiar? Then it gets better. Similarly, the first Dalai Lama, Gendin Drup, was both a highly learned scholar and an accomplished adept, a true bodhisattva. He decided to build a monastic university called Trashi Lunpo in western Tibet. Early in the morning, he would lecture on important texts, and then he assigned his various students to visit individuals in that area to collect donations to build the monastery. He himself directed the construction workers. He was fully involved in everything: teaching, writing books, collecting donations, and building. He made these efforts not for his private welfare, but for the good of society. He was a simple monk and owned nothing, but he engaged in many activities for the long-term welfare of others. That distinctly reminds me of someone that we know, the abbess of Shrivasti Abbey. So if you have the opportunity to get sick with the flu, there's so many things we can do with our mind lying in bed, and it's really an opportunity and not a disaster. And in another talk, I'll continue with what I did with my mind. And so rejoice that there's a chance to purify and to make a determination to use the time that we have left.